Okay, folks, we are live here in Dayton, Ohio for the first ever YPNU Dayton Realtors education session. I'm so excited to have all of you here to kick this great event off. Just a reminder to everybody, we are actually live coast to coast right now, all the way in Portland, Oregon, down to Clarksville, Tennessee, and 7 other associations across the state of Ohio. A very exciting day for Dayton Realtors to put this on for our members and realtor members across the country. So today you guys are here to talk about branding and that the brand is more than just your logo. We have 2 very, very competent, smart individuals coming to talk to you. We have Mr. Matt Sliver, who's the founder and creative director at the Catapult Creative here in Dayton, and of course his right hand, Mr. Ryan Myers, who is the director of digital marketing. So they are going to talk to you today. This Catapult is our partner on this to bring all these classes to you, and they're going to bring a lot of great knowledge. I'd be remiss, though, however, if we did not thank our local sponsor. Mike Romano and Caliber Home Loans is our local sponsor here. They're putting on the entire YPNU series. Very thankful for them for doing that. Just a little bit of housekeeping for you guys. The audio that is recording, all these guys are mic'd up. The mic that I have here is being used in our recording of this. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, but do not ask the question until you've been called on and you have a mic in your hand. That way, the people that are watching, again, coast to coast, have the ability to hear your question, and we can get that answered. We also have people chatting in live on YouTube, asking questions. So at one point, we may stop them and ask that question from the live stream. Jennifer Zeller is going to be monitoring that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to these guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's going to be a great day. This is very interactive, so ask questions as you get them, but make sure you guys absorb all this information. So thanks again for being here, and I'll turn it over to these guys. So welcome. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you. We're very happy to be here this morning. As Andrew said, this is going to be more of a discussion. We're not teachers. We're not coming in here to just kind of lecture to you all. So if you do have a question, please feel free to ask. We're going to be going through some pretty basic stuff at the beginning, and then we hope to get to some questions at the end of it.
All right, so this class we're going over branding and enhancing your online presence, creating and sustaining your brand.
It's awkward to have a mic that you can't actually hear yourself.
Okay, so part 1, we're going to go over the branding basics. Some of you may know some of this stuff, but it may be totally new to you guys. So first off, know your brand colors. We use Dayton Realtors as an example. This is one of the logos we did recently. And then you want to make sure that once you know your colors, that's the first step.
This is something we see people not do correctly all the time. I mean, it goes into your printing as well. The consistency of a brand, it's something that's almost cringeworthy when we work in the creative field all the time, but we see people just messing with their colors. I mean, you pay somebody to do a logo, you want that to be reflective on every single thing that you do.
So now you know your colors, now what? Do you have a working file? Does anyone know what that is?
Has anyone had anything like large format printed? Does anybody know what that .eps or AI file is? Yes, ma'am.
When you want your logo or any image uploaded, you have to have it in a certain type of file, and it has to have the DPS that you need in order for it to fill the page or be properly printed.
That is correct. Did everybody hear her? So the .jpeg, it's just too small. You're not going to be able to get the pixel dimensions. This is something that we see all the time. You know, oh, can we get some business cards printed? And they send us, just a JPEG that just doesn't work out. You can't manipulate it. You can't invert the colors. It's just something we constantly see. So is your brand font for print, web, both? Another thing that we see. People want to use these really fancy script fonts, but they don't end up having it. And again, this is going to cause an inconsistency on the web.
Okay, so how can your logo be used? On black and white, on dark versus light backgrounds? How much white space is needed around the artwork? So these are all things that you have to think about when you're getting like print materials or email newsletters, stuff like that.
So what Ryan's saying with that is when we do a logo, we do like a very simple brand guide. Has anybody ever seen a brand guide? It's basically, this is a logo that we did recently for the city of Troutwood. This is what it should be like. and this is what it shouldn't be like, right? So what we do when we turn these over, you give these to a printer, you give them to a vendor. If you're a sponsor for an event, this is what you hand them so they don't, make your brand inconsistent. Again, this is something that we see all the time. Not enough box space. I mean, it looks terrible on that gross orange. But look how nice it looks over this image. Invert the colors a little bit and play with it.
So basic logo usage tips. So what we wanted to do here was, you have a beautiful photo. When you use your logo, obviously this is a full color logo. But to actually place it on a photo, just put a white background behind it. Or you can do an overlay and turn the opacity down like how we did in this one. And it just creates consistency and everyone can see the logo visible.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away from, the obvious. We're trying to sell these homes. These are 600,000 and up homes. So the image is what sells it, but we want to keep our brand consistent.
So now we're going to get into like the social media profile, cover sizes. So with Facebook, we recommend you use, if you have a logo and an icon, just use the icon. So with GA White, obviously we don't have the actual word GA White in the profile pic, but that's where you can use it for the cover photo if you want. With them, we just kind of rotate. We just use their imagery.
And again, I'm sure you all have some sort of Facebook page that you're uploading stuff to. Pixels, that may not mean a whole lot to you, but again, when you get a file back from somebody, this is all that you need to know. Please give me this size photo so that it just looks good.
And same thing with Twitter. Using the icon for the profile and then coming up with a cover photo that meets these specific pixel sizes.
Yeah, again, when people are on their phone and this gets shrunk down, you don't want to see it cut off. You want it to just be consistent across everything.
And with Instagram, obviously there's no cover photos, but same thing, you want to use the icon. And if you have all platforms that look alike, then you have that consistency. Everywhere somebody goes on either Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they recognize it with that icon.
And again, the name's already there, so if we were to shrink this down even lower and try to fit Dayton Realtors into that, you wouldn't be able to read it first off, and then the logo, you wouldn't be able to tell what it is. So the hope is that when somebody, they start to recognize the logo, they can already read the name, you're good to go.
Okay, so social media tips. Reusing other people's photos. This is great for engaging with your audience, sharing their photos. Obviously, you want to get permission from them, so direct message them first. And with Facebook, ask for permission, and then tag them. Always credit the photographer. I've done that in the past, and they get pretty mad. So always credit.
Yeah, user-generated content is great. So I run a brand called Dayton Inspires. Is anybody familiar with Dayton Inspires? Yeah? I'd like you to raise your hand. Do you have a question? No? Have you taken a photo at the mural? Yeah, great. So it's user-generated content, so I don't have to constantly produce my own stuff. It's great because we've got like 35,000 photos to choose from on that brand, right? So I don't always have to go out, create my own content. If people are talking about you, you can go online. But like Ryan said, you really need to ask them to use it. You'd be surprised, how much people like their privacy.
And then general social media platform rules. Don't post too many photos on Twitter. Facebook, feel free to put words in your captions and photos. Post a mixture of just posts versus video and photo. If you plan on boosting your post, use the image text test, which we'll show you on the next slide. And for Instagram, all your information should just go in the caption, because Instagram is strictly for photos or video, so just keep anything you want to say in the caption.
Yeah, people will just scroll right on through.
Okay, so has anybody advertised on Facebook? So are you guys familiar with the image text test? It's fairly new. They used to do the 20% rule where you can't have more than 20% text. Now they scrapped that and they base it on, okay, how much text do you have? So if you have a whole bunch of text over the photo, your ad may not run. And then obviously the best one is your ad will run normally. So here's an example of an open house post. Obviously that's the bad one, way too much text versus this. You can still read it, and it has the logo on the background. So go to the next slide. This one got the image text medium, which means your ad may reach a much lower audience. So you're pretty much, your money's not going to go as far as if you would just go with the smaller text. So this one with the smaller one, got the okay, so it'll run normally. So always look at how much text you have on a photo.
You really want to maximize your money when you're advertising on Facebook, because you can spend 20, 50 bucks and you could see completely different results based on what Ryan's talking about here. So like impressions, right? With this guy, you might pay the exact same amount, 50 bucks, and maybe it only hits 1,000 people. If Facebook likes your image, this could potentially reach 5,000 people. Same amount of dollars.
So which platform is best for you? Don't post just to post. Like, don't think that you just have to put something up today or tomorrow. Really come up with something engaging that's unique. Share your process of buying and selling a home, not just a picture home for sale. Just kind of engage with your audience, show the personal aspect of yourself. And if you're posting the same stuff as everyone else, you won't stand out. Also, collaborating with local businesses or organizations with some cross-promotion or event hosting, kind of like how Caliber's doing this one. That creates a much more unique experience and kind of puts you in a different light. Part 2.
Well, before we get into part 2, does anybody have any questions at this point? Not a single question. Great.
Okay, so everyone's under a brokerage, correct? For the most part. So you guys have your own guidelines that you have to go by. So that's pretty much what part 2 is about, is knowing what your brokerage brand guidelines are and then still making it unique to your business as well. So working on a real estate brokerage, you're bound by their branding rules, but that doesn't mean doesn't have to be a restriction. Honor their brand and then find where you can set yourself apart. So whether that's using their colors, but you're using a custom icon, there's a lot you can do within those guidelines. Don't look like everyone else. People buy from you because they like you. Your brand should be as you as your clothes. And your brand is so much more than a logo. So right here we have, this is just going on with consistency. Obviously we have the Facebook page, the logo, and then the trees, this photo, still matches with the logo. And then as you can see, they're using the same greens as the green in the logo, and even on here tied into the YPN advertisement.
Yeah, tell a story with it, right? We're telling a story through the image, we're tying it all back to the logo itself, and just enhancing that visual brand that people are going to tie back to who you are as an individual.
Knowing your target market. Who is your most profitable customer? Is your most profitable customer who you sell the most to? If not, your brand is talking to the wrong person, and address those needs.
So with this, I think this is really important because you're not going to sell to everybody, right? With us personally and our customers, we like to fit this really fine middle ground, right? I don't want to work with the very large, Procter & Gamble's. That would be great, but that's not who my target market is. And then, sometimes mom and pop shops can't necessarily afford us, right? So we like to fit this nice middle ground. So that's who we're targeting. That's who we're trying to work with. It helps us do the work that we would like to do. It also allows us the ability to, grow and expand and not change too fast, right?
So who is your target customer, and what are they predominantly using? So here we have single family, bachelor, multiple family, and empty nesters. So you want to really know, okay, who is your target market and what platforms are they using?
And you're not supposed to post the same thing. Like, don't take your Twitter post and post it to Facebook and then post it to Instagram. It's totally not going to work. If people are following you on all 3 platforms and they see that they're getting the exact same thing on everything, there's no value add there, right? So what we typically use Twitter for is more like conversation, right? This is a great customer service, back and forth. You have direct contact with the brand. If you ever have problems with Spectrum Cable, get them on Twitter, right? But again, with Facebook, you're going to have to pay to play. So the information that you put out there, make sure it's really engaging, that it's actually good quality content. My favorite personally is Instagram because you have a captured audience, right? Placing ads on Instagram is amazing, all right? There's nothing on the sidebar. They can't really click on anything else. They have to scroll right on past you. So again, if you're trying to decide, if you already know who your customer is, then choose those platforms in which they are going to be there. Placing ads is also another great way to figure out who those customers are. You get a lot of really, really great data back from Facebook. You can basically break it down to figure out if people bite their nails or not. So it's kind of creepy, but at the same time, it'll really help you understand who's engaging with you, and then you want to start to create content that is actually going to be directed towards those people. You'll see your audience engage with you more. Yeah, I think it's funny we got Bachelor. Does anybody have a target market for Bachelor? I don't really know. All right. So we have successfully burned through the entire presentation in about 20 minutes. Yes, Andrew?
No, I just, a little bit, one of the things that's really powerful about these guys coming is the fact that they've worked with a whole gauntlet of clients. As Matthew said, they're working with some of those small businesses. They're working all the way up with large corporations, associations like ours. They helped us design our new website, our new logo, which is great. I love it. But one of the things that I think Ryan and I were talking about yesterday was, how realtors don't always differentiate themselves in their business. Because I think a lot of times realtors get into the business and they say, I'm going to work with everybody. Whoever wants a house, I'm going to help them buy a house. Whoever wants to sell their house, I'm going to help them sell a house. And a lot of times that can be advantageous, but at the same time, I think you guys as business owners and people who are constantly doing business development also realize that there is a benefit in niching yourself. And I think that gets expressed in your branding. And like Ryan and I were talking about yesterday was, does your logo actually talk about the brand service that you give? If you're catering to people that are in the high $300,000, $500,000 range, that's a different concierge experience that you're going to be giving. Because remember, we're talking about how this brand is more than a logo. So does your logo and the experience that you give actually have that Mercedes-Benz? There's a reason people buy Mercedes-Benz, because they want the brand, they want the image that comes with driving a Mercedes sports car. Whereas the Honda Accord is a great car, it's an economic car, but people are buying a Honda Accord because they want that type of experience. They want that type of car. So if you're trying to in your business be the Mercedes-Benz brand experience, does your logo communicate that? You can look all over the internet at a bunch of terrible logos that don't necessarily tell you, okay, do these people work with high-end clients? Do they work with low-end clients? So just a little bit, I guess this is my question. How do you guys, when you start talking to somebody that says, because a lot of times you have people who come to you that say, hey, Matt, Ryan, I just need a new logo. And that's the most ambiguous question that somebody could say, the ambiguous statement. I usually turn them down. Yeah, exactly. Matt said he usually turns them down. But when you start qualifying them, because that's kind of the point I want to get to with these folks, is part of your brand experience is how you qualify these people coming into your business. Because I'm sure you've all had clients where you've said, I don't think this is the type of money I want to make. Because, not all money is created equally. So Ryan and Matt, talk a little bit about how you guys qualify people and work them into what kind of brand experience they're trying to deliver.
So when we were working on the Dayton Realtors brand, the first thing that Andrew said to me was, I don't want a house, I don't want a key, right? I'm sure some of you in this room have a house and or a key in your logo, and there is nothing wrong with that. But we saw an amazing opportunity with that, right? So the reason, I'm just going to bring up the logo itself. So the reason that we came up with this, so there's a grid inside of this. I have a really pretty video that I wish I could show you, but it'll mess with our online streaming. So when we were having the branding conversation of what is the Dayton Realtors, what are they becoming, right? What does every neighborhood have? We actually did a logo that had, so every neighborhood has squirrels in Dayton, right? So we actually had, it was more to push them to choose this logo, but some people did like it. But every neighborhood has trees, right? So what we have is the bottom, the representation of that is a bridge crossing over into the city grid, and you can kind of see how it's all laid out. But when we're actually looking to, it takes hours and hours and hours to come up with something like this. I think that we spent probably 40 hours just concept drawing and just going through everything. But it's all about the words, right? And I wish that we had just the presentation that we went through with you. With what do we come up with? Neighborhood.
Yeah, it was neighborhood, information, think tank, but most importantly, the number one word was community.
Yeah, yeah. So Dayton Realtors is so much more than just selling. You guys are so much more than just selling houses, right? You're selling dream. You're selling, somebody's first home that they're going to live in for the next 10, 20 years. So what is the core essence? And that's what a logo should represent and a brand should represent, right? It's not just, the visuals. It's the actual words and the meaning behind everything. It's something that you really have to just stick to, because if you start to kind of lean away from that, customers are going to get confused. They're not going to want to work with you. And to be fair, there's a lot of realtors in the area, right? They can work with whoever they want, and I'm sure a lot of you compete for the same thing sometimes. So standing out, like I said, I don't have a problem with the key or a house. But if you want to be unique, which you are, show that in the content that you're posting, show that in the way that you're talking to your customers and really sharing that experience and that message with everybody, that, your website, your online presence does the job for you, right? You all have to sleep at some point, but, people might be out shopping at 1 a.m., online. So just being there and being consistent is...
And it really is the first thing people see when they find out about your business, and it could be the last thing they see as well. So you want to make a very, very solid impression on them, have something unique that when they meet you, they'll be like, oh, okay, I get it.
So one other question that I think everybody is dying to know, and maybe they're just too scared to be the one that asks it, how do I make a logo? There's a lot of ways I think that you can go about this. Having worked, in the same industry before I came here to Dayton as Matt and Ryan, I've always had clients, I've always had people that have said, I want to update my logo, I want to do this. And then the next thing you know is you start walking through the process, you hand them a price tag, and they say, oh no, I don't have enough money for that. There's always ways to go do something the wrong way. There's always ways to find the cheap option, but is that what you owe to yourself in your business? So I think one of the things that we could talk through just for a second is I think the power of having that team with you. A lot of people will go, you all have seen some of these logos that are out here. These are things that somebody's made in Photoshop. They've, gone to Fiverr and they've paid, somebody in Indonesia $5 to make something for them here in Dayton, Ohio. And I think that's why it's so important to have that team and that counselor really that can kind of say, look, this is where we've messed up, on these before. This is where this person had issues. One of the things that I had told Ryan that I really wanted you guys to kind of key in on is some of those horror stories. Talking a little bit about the people who chose the cheap option and then ultimately probably came back to you and was like, okay, I'm ready to make the investment, in what I'm doing. Because remember, these are investments into your business, whether you're, implementing a CRM, whether you're implementing a actual concierge service. There's services out there where if somebody's browsing on your website at 3 o'clock in the morning, they see a property they like, well, your regular old contact form is just going to send it to your email inbox that you're going to maybe check at 10 a.m. unless you have something else to do. But there's actually services out there that when they key in on that and go to your website and enter it in, they're immediately paired with a live person that says, I will work with Stephanie to set this appointment for you tomorrow. And that, again, is part of that brand experience. You brought up Charter. Or they're not Charter anymore. They were Charter when they were in Alabama, but now they're Spectrum. Spectrum, how many of you have been at 2 a.m. trying to work and your Spectrum internet goes out? And the first thing you do is, who do I scream at? Well, there's people on Twitter you can scream at. And I'm not advocating to scream at people on Twitter, but I'm saying is that is part of their brand experience, that Delta, American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, all of these companies have a brand experience of customer service. Just because you're not a 30,000 employee corporation doesn't mean you don't have to have or shouldn't have that same experience. So again, focusing in on the brand experience that we're talking about, not a logo, the brand experience. Talk a little bit about the people that have come to you and have been there and said, well, I need 30 people to look at this. Let's talk about how we don't want 30 people to look at this. Let's talk about how we need a small team to kind of look at this and talk about some of those stories.
So what Andrew's referring to, so the conversations that I typically have, brother, sister, cousin, friend of a friend, relative, did my website for me, and I completely messed it up. So websites, logos, they're not a cheap thing, right? But it seems extremely, what's the word I'm looking for? You want to go with the cheap option, right? We all want to save money. Typically what happens is you end up having to come back to somebody like us and actually pay twice, right? So you really want like horror stories? Ryan, give us a horror story.
No names. Yeah, no names. Okay.
It's going to be hard not to drop the name, though.
No. Are we talking about the same one? I was talking about the one where they posted on Facebook. So,
oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
So, again, we're going to talk about the key in the house. So I don't want a key. I don't want a house. Guess what we ended up making? A house. It was great. So this one person in particular decided to crowdsource opinion from Facebook, which I highly, highly do encourage you not to do that. So it was in our contract. You're not allowed to do that. So she posts all of our examples on Facebook and decides to take those opinions and it was a very difficult process in the first place, like somebody literally tells you, I don't want a house, I don't want a key, and then goes, I love that house, it's beautiful, and then decides to go on Facebook and then actually like crowdsource that information. So we got a lot of very interesting feedback from a lot of people that probably don't necessarily know what they're talking about, which is great, but it totally just confused the process, like 100%, just turned it all the way around, and that's probably how we ended up going with the house, because everybody goes, oh, I really love the house. But they also showed all of our like random examples, right? So one of the things that we had kicked around was doing like a magic wand, which ended up looking extremely strange. And I never would have shared it with anybody, and the only reason that we did it in the first place was because it was requested of us, and that's what we get paid for. Like when I mentioned the squirrel logo, the only reason that we showed the squirrel logo was so that we could come to like the actual conclusion of the tree, right? Going back to that, what's in every single neighborhood. So again, I got a lot of really fun feedback. Ended up having to turn the process all the way around. And when it ended up happening,
We went with the house logo.
we ended up with the house,
So, yeah.
which just again, it's not the worst. With this branding process, so working with city, municipality, government, right? So elected officials change relatively quickly. With the city of Trotwood, so we all know Trotwood, right? All right, I will go into it. The reason that we wanted to do this project, right? People have to pitch us the same way that we have to pitch them. The mayor came to me and said, I am repurposing, the old Kmart's, all these old different properties, and I'm turning them into light manufacturing facilities. And I've created 600 jobs that all start at $45,000 a year. And I go, great, it's not a Walmart. You've actually created like a living wage for your citizens. I'm in, right? So what do you see when you hear something like that? I see growth, right? So that's where we came to the conclusion of Trotwood's growing together, right? They have a long road ahead of them, but they have some really great leadership. So we went through the entire branding process. We've selected a logo. We've started to print business cards and signage and change little things around the city. And then it got brought to city council, who hated it, right? So they literally told me, I got grilled at a podium similar to this about, I hate the tree. What kind of tree is it? And again, they're not branding professionals, but their opinion is very valid, and I've listened to it because I'm paid to. So I had to redo the whole branding process again, which, again, I got paid to do it, but we ended up with the exact same conclusions, right? I give them what we call a discovery doc, which is basically just this long list of questions that you have to provide answers for. The people that raised the most problems with it didn't fill out the discovery doc in the first place and decided to grill me again at the next meeting, which was like, you're a liar. So again, we came to the exact same conclusion, and I went back to City Council. I presented all the findings that we had from the previous discovery, the most recent discovery, and then I showed them the overlap between the two, right? What did we talk about? We talked about growth, we talked about jobs, we talked about repurposing, and again, Troutwood is growing together. And I showed them all the logo examples again, and then guess what they chose? They chose the exact same thing that we came up with before. What's up, Bob? A little technical difficulty. All right, Ryan, give us another horror story.
Well, I just want to point out. Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of long delays as we
Okay.
share the microphone.
All right. I don't have a question prepared. But when you mention the branding process, for agents who might be just getting started and don't really have the budget to pay for the services, but they need to get started doing something on their own, is there a checklist or an outline or a format or an idea that might help them to follow?
And I'm back. What I would suggest, because there are some really, really talented designers out there. Designers are not branding people. And you can get consultants, is what I would recommend doing, right? You can meet with a branding consultant, get some of that information down, and go and find your freelancer, get your logo concepts put together, and bring it back to your consultant and save a lot of money. I mean, I just put myself out of the job by telling you that. But that's what I would recommend doing. If you don't have $5,000-$10,000 to get a logo done or a brand done, pay, get a little $500 retainer with a branding consultant, go off, hire, go on Fiverr. They'll give you as much as you want for $100. Bring it back to those people and just kind of work through that process, manually. Again, everybody knows a designer. You can go to students, SAA. Is everybody familiar? Well, it's College of Modern Design. Is that what they just changed to? Yeah. Is anybody familiar with SAA or College of Modern Design? Those people are really talented. When I go to their portfolio shows, I'm scouting for the most talented people, and about half of our staff is our SAA grads. And they'll actually do agency work for you at a very, very low rate. So if you don't have the budget to hire an agency or something like that, you're gonna have to do a little bit more legwork, but it'll be worth it, right? Yes, ma'am. I don't mind walking around. It's like a game show.
I guess what I don't understand is our company already has a logo. Berkshire Hathaway has a logo. So why are we creating another logo?
Well, it's not necessarily, so you want to stand out inside of that, right? How many, you say Berkshire Hathaway? So how many people work for Berkshire Hathaway locally? Do you want to stand out with between 1,500 people? Like even I've done probably a dozen Realtor logos for local agents, and they do it because they want to stand out, right? Like Kunal Patel Group is Coldwell Banker, but everybody knows Kunal Patel Group, right? He's got a very, very simple thing. He's got a brand name. He's got recognition, and he sells a lot of houses. Kunal Patel Group. You're not familiar? Anybody else not familiar with Kunal? What was that? Yeah, he's some guy. Just does $25 million a year.
So we do have legal guidelines that we have to stay within with our brokers' logo and information. So how do we build our logo and still, like, where would you say we should start to build our personal brand, but within our broker? They're really cracking down on, staying with the legal. Your broker has to be your brand. Where do you suggest that we start with keeping that? I guess the main thing.
Yeah.
But
So starting out, you would want to get their brand guidelines. So what colors do you have to stay within? What fonts do you have to stay within? And they may have a lot more room for you to kind of be unique. But usually what happens is you have to tie in, you know, if they have orange in their logo, you probably have to use orange. Or their logo has to be bigger on a yard sign than yours.
Exactly. They have to be the more prominent.
Mhm.
We have to build ours within that.
And that's where like the social media pages really help, because you can use your icon or your logo as your profile image, and then that's what people are going to see when you're speaking to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just trying, if we just use ours, does that stay within our legalities if our thing is just us?
I mean, as you said, the broker always has to be the most prominent piece on your thing, whether it's your website, whether it's your signs. The law requires that to be the most prominent piece. However, what they're saying is that going beyond, to use the Berkshire Hathaway example, Berkshire, very large company, very, very prominent people, but you're also dealing with other people that are in that space. Your brand is your brand. Legally, you have to have Berkshire Hathaway or Home Experts on that website, on that piece somewhere mentioned there. But it doesn't have to be sitting in your personal logo. It doesn't have to be sitting in your personal logo. I think what Ryan's trying to say is that while you maintain the state requirements, or we have people in other states, the brokerage, state law requirements to have that prominent and in place, your personal brand, putting it on a sign similar to how Caliber has theirs up here on our sign up here, putting that in places is where you can have that flexibility and freedom. But I think what Ryan's saying is that your own brokerage may say you can have your personal brand, but it needs to meet these certain color requirements, whether it's the Colwell blue or whatever it is. There may be those requirements, so be mindful of those, but don't hamstring yourself in kind of being creative. The only thing I was going to add to what Cheryl said was that in terms of a checklist, Matt described the process that we as an association went through in kind of working through them before they even put, I was going to say pen to paper, but nobody draws anymore, but before they got into, Daniel does, got it. Before they even got into designing a logo, we spent several hours sitting and going through a checklist. Like Matt said, we knew that we didn't want to have the house, we didn't want to have, the kind of stereotypical real estate icons, because we knew that we were more than houses as an association. In the same way that you said, realtors are more than just selling houses. You're community builders, you're community change agents. So we wanted something that did, in fact, incorporate that kind of community feel. So I think without spending a dime, you can sit there with a piece of paper and start listing off the things that when somebody tells you, what do you do as a realtor? You have your own mental checklist that you go through on the services that you provide. You're the counselor, you're the advocate, you're the, and you start coming up with these words that all have icons kind of associated with them. And that kind of helps you kind of work through what those keywords are. And that kind of works you into, before you even put a design down, into what's the feel I'm going for. If you feel like I'm more of a counselor and a friend because I work with this type of client, then that kind of, you think of the Allstate hands, you think of you're in good hands, that's their whole brand. But let's say you're the person that says, listen, I sell high-end luxury, I'm a second home, vacation home person, this is my brand. Maybe your icons are different. Maybe your icons are making your dreams come true. Maybe your icons are riches and wealth. Again, that's going to be a different niche focus. But I think like I said, before you spend a dime, you're kind of going through this personal mental checklist about what keywords come to your head when it comes to the type of business that you run. So I just wanted to follow up on that kind of question. Good. Heather?
I mean, it's kind of piggybacking off of everything, and this might be more of a statement more than a question, but could you explain more about the process of the story and the discovery and discovering your why and what you want to do about it?
Do you have the presentation on here? Just give me a second. What I'm going to pull up is the actual discovery document and the presentation that we did for the Dayton Realtors logo. Wow, you pulled that up super fast.
Is this it? Yeah.
Is that the keynote, though? Find the keynote. It's right there. It's that.
I don't think I have the keynote.
That'll work. That's not it.
Oh.
The PDF will be fine. Just pull that back up. Okay. So this was the board presentation, correct?
Mhm.
This is what we presented to the board. So again, it's all a mental thing, right? You're trying to get people to agree with you and understand. So Dayton Realtors, we had basically been told, like, this is the name that we want to use, so rebrand, logo design. So what does your brand say? When we look at dabr.com, I mean, what does that say to you? It says 90s. Nobody uses the .com anymore. Everybody's got a website. Dayton Area Board of Realtors, it just doesn't say anything, right? You look at it, it's got that fun little swoosh thing, current brand mark. So this was the actual process. So the brainstorming, I'm just going to read this for you in case you can't see it. What are the top 3 values of the Dayton Realtors you would want represented in a brand mark? We would want to avoid anything too Dayton-centric, right? The Wright Brothers, Wright Flyer thing, well overplayed. However, how important it is for the logo to feel like Dayton, aside from just having Dayton in the name. What makes the neighborhoods and communities of Dayton uniquely Dayton? What does the network of realtors you represent look to in leadership? Is there one thing you want in the Dayton community in general to understand about the Dayton Realtors? What would want to be said? So the two main focuses that we had here were community and real estate, right? And this was an open brainstorming session, about 10 of us in the session itself. So on the community side, we have fundraising, brick homes, streets, family, strong history, hardworking. On the real estate side, business development, government affairs, professionalism, and power. And then we start to come up with words in the middle, right? So we're looking at your catalyst. We want to unite. We've got integrity and trust. There's a lot of networking that happens here, resources. We kept coming back to this bricks thing because it's foundational. Ethics, advocacy. So all these things is what Dayton Realtors does. So this is who we are. We're neighborhoods, interconnectedness, networking, the street grid, strong roots foundation. Who we're not just real estate. We're not just homes. We're not Flight. We're not the Wright Brothers. We're not dabear.com. We're not any one neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah. It's who we're not is just as important as who we are, right? Who do you want your customers to see when they search online? Who do you not want them to see? Video slide here. So this is where we had a really fancy, animation of the logo just to show like what the concept was. So again, then it's presented. We are the Dayton Realtors. Here's what it looks like on the web. Shirts, sign, on black, and then that was it.
With having a marketing background, with every brand and logo, how do you know to integrate this logo with subliminal messages as opposed to like another logo? Like when I looked at the new logo for DABR, I didn't realize that there's streets and everything else and a bridge in that. I just looked at it as a tree and going from there. And then with developing my logo, with the hashtags I use, should I try to develop the hashtag into the logo, or is it better to just make it more simple, I guess?
What is the name of the brand?
Mine?
Yeah.
The Iron Gate Realty, Realtors.
So.
And then my brand would be Tracy and Associates.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out a way to take, one of the 50 hashtags I use and try to make possibly that logo, or should I just make it more simple?
I always think that simple is better. Don't overcomplicate the process. It's very, very difficult to get a brand name that's going to transfer into a hashtag itself. Like, I think one of the most successful ones that we've done is the Dayton Inspires. It's kind of built into it, right? But you really don't want to overcomplicate that, right? But like your slogan, you could build that into it. It's just another way that you can kind of get your customers to engage with you. Like, this is what they think of when they hear me. But don't try to force it. Like, especially using your hashtags, you have to, I wouldn't expect them, like your customers, to start using that too, because it is yours. But it is a way that they can go, click that link and see all of the content that you've done, and maybe people will start to pick it up. But I would also pick something a little bit more unique, which is kind of difficult. In the day and age where it's really hard to find a unique URL, so we try to find conversational URLs that aren't necessarily just like our name is Catapult Creative. Somebody in somewhere owns catapultcreative.com. So launch Catapult. So I kind of tie that back to the brand, right? We're launching brands, we're launching websites, we're launching all these different things, and I kind of just tie it in that way. Anyone else?
Well, and I just was going to add to what you said. I agree completely with what Matt just said about simplicity. I think simplicity is always good. However, to the point about this kind of street grid image, as somebody who really believed in that kind of subliminal marketing, like you're saying, the reason we opted to kind of go with this subliminal message was it is a conversation starter. If somebody just comes to me and says, well, your logo is just a tree, how important is that? It's like, well, let me tell you how important that is. And then we're able to have a conversation about how, as an association, we take a bird's eye view to the community, all communities, and this is a bird's eye view of the city of Dayton. This is literally the bridge coming across the river into downtown. And it kind of creates that opportunity to really sell who we are. So I think simplicity is good, but at the same time, I think that kind of subliminal messaging, like you said, leads to storytelling. It leads to that kind of brand identity, which, as you said, as an Iron Gate agent, you want to kind of separate these associates that you have as your team and kind of say, this is who we are. They may work with these people, but we work with this approach. I think a really good example of that out in the market right now is John Poleski. I think John's done a good job of kind of, he likes this law enforcement, he's law enforcement, so he has his brand that kind of indicates that he's part of this law enforcement community. And I think he's done a really good job with kind of owning that niche space. So I think that would be an example of somebody to look at, or not, just that's an example of kind of who's kind of found that niche and kind of owned that space. Jennifer, do we have any questions online?
No, but I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so this was brought up, the use of slogans. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's an effective marketing tool? Is that something that if I want to create a brand for myself, I should consider? Any do's and don'ts that I should stay away from, maybe?
Having a slogan is totally fine. I just think if you just have one slogan, don't have multiple, and find a way to incorporate it with your logo. So that's where, obviously you're not going to be able to use your slogan on your, Facebook profile icon. So you want to know how to use it. You can use it on mailing items, email newsletters, or a letterhead on the bottom, because that's something that people recognize once they see it over and over.
Anyone else?
So once you have your new logo and it tells the story of your experience and all that, do you guys have any suggestions or tips as far as rolling it out? Especially if you have maybe an old logo that you're phasing out, something like that?
I would say with Dayton Realtors, video says a lot. Or, just doing a comparison side by side on social media. There's a lot of things you can do, but I think just making the announcement is huge.
And rolling it out consistently. So, with GA White, for example, the images say more than just the logo itself, right? People love these big, beautiful homes and their kitchens and the bathrooms and all of that. So you want to change everything at once, right? You don't want to do it in little phases. So just have everything ready to go and plan it. It's a really exciting thing to push something out there. You're going to get a lot of buzz about it. People are going to really enjoy it. But change every little thing that you can think of. So your imagery, new content, have a bunch of stuff ready to go, 4 or 5 Facebook posts ready to go, your Instagram content, be ready to just start a conversation with it. So having all that in mind before you actually push it out, because you're just going to kind of, miss the mark.
Yeah, another thing to add to that is just maintaining consistency, even like with fonts. So like if you have a certain font on your website, use that same font on like social media graphics as well.
Okay. Well, I think we're kind of approaching the end of the hour here. One thing that I want to remind people is that this is a 4-part series. So we're going to be covering websites. We're going to be covering social media. And so one of the things when we talk about, this is the reason we chose brand to be first, was because kind of you got to have this before you can kind of build the rest of the house. If you don't have kind of who you are, what you're saying, what you're putting out there for your target demo, you've got to have that first. When we look at realtor websites, there's a lot of times when I've looked at people's websites out there and people don't even have their phone number on their website. They have the ability to search for all these properties and stuff because they have, IDX built into all this stuff, but they don't even have their phone number. Or the second thing is that it's not optimized for mobile. Think of how much time you spend on your phone shopping, doing things, browsing things, as compared to when you're sitting at your desktop, laptop. That's all part of brand experience. If somebody comes to your website and they have to zoom and pinch and can't find this whole thing, forget that. I'm going somewhere else. We live in a society now where the consumer is incredibly picky about how they shop. Things like Amazon and, eBay and all these things have completely changed the consumer mindset. By the time they call you and they talk to you, many of these consumers have been searching for weeks. Many of these consumers have been on websites searching for property. They have 99 properties that they've looked at, and they want you to show them 98 of them. So, the other thing that I was talking to Ryan about yesterday about websites was it's amazing to me that realtors don't have qualifying forms to fill out. When you have a buyer, you have a page on your website that says for buyers, working with buyers, but yet many of you don't have a qualification checklist. What do you like to do in your free time? What restaurants do you like? Where do your kids go to school? What ages are your kids? All these things that can qualify them and help you provide that better concierge service. But many people don't even think about that. They think, well, I just have to have property search. There's a million ways to search for property, but there's not a million ways for you to be the absolute best fit for this client, and that's knowing them better than they know themselves. That's what you as an advocate, as a realtor, bring to the table, is the ability to say, okay, based on these qualifying questions, and you can use Google Docs for free. Go to Google Docs, fill out a form, embed it onto your website, let them fill that in, it sends it to you in a spreadsheet. Capturing emails. How many times, you want to talk about marketing, how are you capturing emails? The ability to sign up for free updates in your zip code. There's tons of services out there, but we don't farm. We wait, and we kind of wait for people to come to us instead of going out and actually hunting down these leads. All these things are very simple, inexpensive things, but yet we don't see it. But I don't know how many of you guys came to Explode conference last year or this year. I think we had it. And one of the things that I think it was Eric who got up and talked about it, and he calls it the website destroyer, his talk, and it's where he literally gets people's websites up on the screen and destroys them. And it's kind of embarrassing for them, but at the same time, it's very valuable because the number one thing he points out is he goes, "How the hell do I call you? You want me to call you, you want me to reach out to you, and yet your phone number isn't on the homepage, and it's not clickable." Right now, if I'm on my phone and I click a phone number, what does it say? It's annoying. It calls up and says, "Are you sure you want to call this number?" Well, if you're a realtor, you better want them to call. So it's simple things like that we're going to cover in some of these other sessions. Matt mentioned the social media piece, how to start preloading content up, because the number one complaint I always hear is, "I'm a realtor, I'm busy, I don't have time to post content." Okay, nobody's telling you to spend that time. There's services out there where you can load a month's worth of content up in 2 hours. I did it all the time for clients, and you guys do it all the time. You preload all this content up there, because remember, it's buzzes, it's touch points. How many times does your audience see that you're posting something out there? You can load it up. So that's what this whole series is about. It's about taking a deeper dive into some of these kind of more seemingly complex marketing topics, but making them manageable and making them doable. So again, I want to thank these guys. We'll give them a round of applause. Definitely a great presentation. And definitely want to mention our friends at Caliber Home Loans who have sponsored this 4-part series. Jennifer's giving me a sign in the back that you have some sheets in front of you to let us know how we did with this. Please fill those out and give them to her before you leave. Other than that, these guys are going to hang around for just a little bit, I assume, and you feel free to come up and chat with them. But again, thank you guys for being here. And thank you, all the people that are out there in the internet world watching.